You've been sharing your work on Instagram and YouTube for well over the past 10 years now. And not only just sharing your photography, but sharing behind the scenes as well. I'm wondering, how do you bring up the courage to put so much work out there and so consistently as well? You've been doing it for so long and the internet has changed so much over that time. I'm wondering, how you managed to continue on sharing your work.
I think that's a great question, and I was laughing during it because I posted something on Facebook today where I was talking about another photographer's opinion on one of the photos I shared. Like I have a thicker skin than when I started, but I think what really drives me for anything that I do is just kind of like, how can I make this content helpful to someone? And if there's going to be any sort of like backlash about a photo that I posted, I try to keep that in mind. Like, how is it going to help people? And if it helps people, but I still get backlash and it negatively affects my mind in some ways, I get a little frustrated or annoyed. I tried my best to push it to the side to kind of just help people with the content that I'm creating. So I think that's what kind of drives me this whole time. I think it's closer to 15 years that I posted stuff online. So I feel old whenever I say the length of time that I've been posting online.
It's like, has the internet even been here for that long? You're like, how long have you been posting? But your work definitely, has helped a lot of people. But I'm just so curious about, like, how do you separate that, your art versus helping people? Because every time you try to help people, you're not going to help everyone. But your art is definitely intertwined with the work that you've done to help people. Like, you're sharing your work and then examples of how you produce the work as well. Like, you help people get to that point, but the end result is still your work.
I think it's what it usually was in the beginning was me trying to figure out, okay, what do other people like? And then I thought, there's some things that I do like or prefer more in my own work. So what is going to be more important, pleasing other people or pleasing myself? Because there was years where I was taking photos, and obviously, they were fine enough to deliver to a client, but it wasn't stuff that I was personally loving my own self. And I think whenever I would get backlash on the style that I kind of helped popularize, which is using flash with wide apertures, blurry backgrounds, I think I got so much backlash in the beginning of it, like years, and then slowly over time, people were like, I kind of like this stuff too, and then they started to take photos that way. But I think having that idea of making sure that I actually like the quality of work that I'm producing was something that kind of continued me on that path of making sure that I need to like this work. I like this work now. But now how can I help other people produce the same work if they like that work as well? I think that kind of answers your question, maybe.
Yeah, I think understanding that you can't please everyone when you're trying to create work for other people, how do you ever know whether they're going to enjoy it or not? I think that's such the internet these days. Like, it can work for a small amount of time and then the algorithm will change a bit and that style's not in anymore.
Yeah, and again, it's just like you can't please everyone. So that's why I think when I started to kind of really engrave that in my brain, that's when I was like, what do I like? Let's focus on that. And if people don't like my work, it's fine. There's other types of work out there.
I'm interested in how you kind of developed your style. And you sort of talked a bit about it before. I'd love it if you could kind of expand on how you got to that point, because it was very new when you first started, I'm sure, and there were not many other people who do it, and it's now become to a point where everyone has kind of tried that style before, but it's because of you started it. And how did you get to that point when it hadn't been done before?
So thankfully, when I was kind of starting to learn more and more about photography, and I say thankful because I'm glad that this was at least some sort of resource out there, because there was very, very little out there. But when I started to, learn more about lighting, I joined different Facebook groups, and one specific group in particular it was dedicated to sharing behind the scenes. And then I was so glad when I found that group, because again, like, I can count on one hand, like, the amount of resources I had available to me to learn about flash photography. And also it was, I don't think I saw it anywhere else aside from that group where wide apertures were being used with flash. But in that group, there was about, I want to say, three photographers, three of them, yeah, three guys that would post with wide apertures and flash. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. How did you do that? And, thankfully it was a behind the scenes group. So they had shared like some sort of visual to kind of aid me. And I'm very much a visual learner. What was not necessarily easy was understanding the how, because nowadays you can buy a flash and it has high speed sync, and that allows you to take, photos with a wide aperture with flash. But back when I was still learning and, trying to figure it out, you had to do so many workarounds to get that end result. So thankfully one photographer explained a little bit about what he thought, was going on. I think he also got lucky with how it, worked with his specific transmitter and connecting it to the strobe. But basically it was what's called super sync, which is like a variation of hypersync. And again, this is all technical, but high speed sync is just like the easiest to understand and also the easiest to use. You just enable it and you can shoot at whatever shutter speed. But that specific thing that I was utilizing was very difficult. And I had to, again, scour the internet to kind of figure out exactly how best to use that feature and how, what shutter speeds were going to be best for this. But those resources in that group kind of helped me a lot. Those 3 photographers, the guy that helped me the most, he is all natural light now. He's like, strobes, whatever. Another one had a son and he stopped years ago. And also he also started to lean more towards natural light. And then also the 3rd photographer, he doesn't really post at all anymore. And he does still use flash, but now with like more narrow apertures. But for me, I was like, I love this work. I love this quality. So I'm going to keep, doing that.
And how early are we sort of like talking there for everyone else to understand? Because I know that when you say there wasn't much around on the internet about it, I'm sure that we're talking very early, like there wasn't anything.
So I should have explained that for sure. Cause this was maybe 2011, maybe to 2013 or so. Maybe in 2014, but I think 2011 to 13 is when I was figuring out these strobes out there that had those, unique features. But nowadays, I think as early as 2016, when Kodak's made their 8600, that light had high speed sync, had a large power range. And I think it was the fact that it was also affordable made it more accessible to everybody out there. So I think since 2016, at least, people had it. For me, I would say they have it easy nowadays, with the, a transmitter and, all these old strobes that I was using, you had a, you couldn't see the power output. You either had to go to it physically and change the dial yourself. But there was so many, it was not ideal. But now nowadays people have it really, great.
I'm like really glad that I didn't have to work through that era and I had all these other things that I could use to help me understand. But I always like think back to like, wow, that would have been so tough. And you like started on digital as well when that was sort of early. Like I think about other people that use flash before that, and I'm like, oh, just the whole understanding of even how to get the correct exposure to start with is a whole other world without jumping into high speed sync with flash and that. And I'm wondering, who was it that you saw? Did you have any inspirations of work that you saw when you first started? Because I mean, flash is pretty strong in your work. You must have seen that in other people and been like, how can I get that style for myself?
Yeah. So the one story that I always kind of go back to, because it's a honest story. This is exactly what happened. But I was at a local store and I was in the checkout, by the cash register, and sometimes they have magazines there. And somebody had picked up a magazine and they put it backwards down, so the back was showing. But that sometimes that's where they have ad campaigns specifically for oh my gosh, now Dior. I think it was Dior. But they had a beautiful, whole page display or a back cover display of Dior and with Charlize Theron. I don't know if I'm pronouncing her name right, but it was absolutely beautiful. And I was like, oh my gosh, how can I get that type of work right there? And then that's when I was like, okay, I need lighting. I think that's what's going on here. And then, I ordered lighting, but what I should have done first was figure out the how first, because I had all this gear now, but I didn't know how to do that. But the one resource that I always want to give credit for was a photographer by the name of Joey Lawrence. but he was like the only one at the time that I was seeing any sort of behind the scenes content, and not just behind the scenes content, but he was explaining as well, like in addition to that content, because, for me, I thought, okay, the visuals were hard to obtain, but then this guy was going further and explaining the how, and even some editing parts too. And I was like, holy crap, this guy is awesome for doing this, for sharing this stuff online. And I just want to say that I met him eventually, years later, and he was awesome. He was an awesome guy. So I was so really happy with that.
That's great. That's a really cool story, and glad you got to like meet him as well. Like that's beautiful that had come all the way around, and he was actually a good guy after it all. Because you feel like you can see some of those people, and they're like, are they actually good people? I'm interested when it comes to that, because I think so many people still to this day don't share a lot of how they do stuff. You've been very, out there in like sharing everything you do and a lot of behind the scenes of your own work and explaining through it. But there's still so many people that, have work out there that they don't sort of share how they achieve results. I'm curious to know why you think that is, because I go back and forth on it all the time of like, why don't people just talk about what they do?
I think if I had to really think about it, maybe I'll find a better answer. But I think maybe ego, and it sounds a little harsh, but I think for me, I don't have a big head. I don't have a huge ego. I'm happy with my work and I'm happy to help people, but I'm still very much the same person I was 10 years ago. I'm the same person that I'm talking to you, talking to my mom, talking to my wife, talking to my nephews. Like, I don't really like changing based on who I'm talking to. And I think that translates into my work. Like, I'm not going to change into this person where it's like, oh, my work's amazing and, it's unattainable. And, I'm not going to share these things. But I like to be honest with people. Like, honesty is super, super important to me. So if somebody's like, oh, how did you do this? And I'm like, oh, well, let me answer your question. Oh, how'd you do that? Or did you do this editing thing? Oh, no, I did this one. I just like to help, for one, but also be honest. And if I were to say like, oh, I don't know, I got lucky, which I've gotten that answer before when I know for a fact that person had, definitely knows exactly what they did to achieve this result. And then they just give me the answer, oh, I just got lucky. I don't know. I'm like, oh, come on. Like, you know.
Yeah, it's always a bit of a like, I know you've got user experience. That's not just like, and those things don't just happen by chance. Yeah, I've always thought about it, in that way too, of like a lot of people, I think it comes down to them being scared or ignorant as well. Like a little bit of like, they think that helping other people is going to hurt them. And I kind of understand what you're saying with ego as well. Like there is a bit of that involved. Like there's a bit of like pride in their own work, and they don't want to share that, like that ego of like, I've been the one who's come up with this on my own, but everyone's had their influences from other people. And if it's just that one particular style that stands you out, I think the market eventually gets up to you anyway, that other people are learning how to do these things elsewhere.
Yeah, one thing I want to mention real quickly is I had only one experience with the workshop before, and I remember rereading the agreement, with the workshop, and because I had shared it behind the scenes from the workshop, and obviously, I went over this light was here, this light was this, but the person who did the workshop was like, take it down. And I was like, whoa, what's going on? This is what I do. I share stuff online. And he's like, yeah, but you're sharing all my secrets and stuff like that. And for one, I would say he didn't even explain to us the lighting setups or anything. I was thankful enough to go into that workshop knowing lighting, but we had a break, and then he, did all the lighting, and then we just took the shots with his settings. We didn't really learn, but that's besides the point. That's me being a little frustrated still. But my whole point is that he told me to take down the behind the scenes, and I remember thinking to myself, but what's the harm here? And I think, like you said before, some people don't want to share their secrets, or I'm not sure exactly still to this day, but I think my opinion, and still this opinion, is that I thought my post would have helped him get more people, going to his workshop. But by him telling me to take it down, I guess he was scared that people are going to be like, oh, now I know everything about this, quality of work, and now I can take it. But which is very, very much far from the truth, in my opinion. So I'm not sure exactly why sometimes people are like that, but I think, being an open book, I think for me, it's just only benefited me. And I think even the last thing I'll say about this answer, is that I used to share and I've shared behind the scenes content for years, like early on before it was popular. And I remember so many industry leaders telling me, stop sharing the stuff. Like industry leaders, like big ones. They've messaged me privately saying, stop sharing the behind the scenes for this reason, for that reason. And now those same people do the exact opposite. They share the behind the scenes stuff. And it's just still like, it's a marketing tool at this point. But for me, it was just more about being open and honest with people and sharing how I took my stuff, because I struggled for years. So I don't want other people to struggle for years.
That must be such a good feeling when it sort of comes around to like, well, everyone sort of does this now, you know, and I knew I was right. I knew I was right for years to do this, and I was helping people. But when you've got people in your ear saying like this is wrong and it's hurting the industry even, like but really underneath that is just them being scared that it's hurting them.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. I think with your like style as well, like that eventually sort of caught on when that became probably huge and everyone was trying that style with off-camera flash, outdoors, low aperture. That I feel like was really Instagram from 2017 to 2018, 19. Like that was everywhere.
I agree. Yeah. Well, it really was.
Yeah.
I agree.
In those days when you could still share an image on Instagram and it still do well.
Yeah, I did that recently, and I was like, oh, lots of behind the scenes content in this image post. It's gonna do well. It did not do well.
But kind of how did that feel for you, having stuck through with that style? You talked about the other guys earlier on that you kind of learnt from that aren't still there. I'm sure you've come across a lot of people over the years who've gone in and out of styles. You've been very consistent over a long period of time to stick with one style.
I've gotten the advice from people saying, you gotta switch it up. You gotta do this and that. Same people who told me that still have a very unique style of their own. So it's like, why are you telling me this and you're telling me that? But I think that struggle and all that time that it took me to learn this made me very much, saying, and also again, I like the work. Like I did a photo shoot and I posted some photos from, a photo shoot that I did earlier last week, and I like the photos. So it's like, I'm not really like driven. Like if there was some other type of style that I was really driven to try to create, I would have done it already. But I personally like this work that I'm creating. And at the end of the day, I think that's super important to me for not only the quality of work that I'm going to consistently provide people, but for my mental health, I guess. There's times where, in the past when I was struggling for years, where I was just, I was delivered the photos to the client and think, I did horrible. How can I do better next? Should I just quit? And I think now I'm happy with all the things, all the check marks or the check boxes are ticked, and I'm happy with the work. So that's what keeps me kind of going with the same kind of quality.
Has there ever been a time where you've had trouble convincing a client of style? I know that myself, like styles change a lot and other people ask for other things like whatever's on trend at the moment, and trying to convince them that, no, I have this style and I don't think that's quite as good as what I can do. Have you've had that. How do you work with that?
What I think is that when you are very high, when you have your prices super high to the point where you get luxury clientele, that's where I think they kind of know you for a certain style and hire you for that style. But I think when you go to the more average photographer, let's say the people who are in it a year and then they started charging and stuff, I very much try to tailor any sort of like advice towards them. And I always tell them, you might have a client that has a certain goal in their mind, natural light, airy and stuff. So I think the best thing you can do, and I think this is the case for most things, is communicate with the subject, communication. Because even my sister, I know that she knows that my style is my style. And, if I take photos, it'll be that style. But I also know that if she, prefers a certain look, like natural light and airy, that I will kind of find a happy balance between my own style and that style. And then I'll, kind of lean a little towards her, which is, again, is easier for me because, natural light's easier in my opinion. But, it's just finding that balance and communicating with the subject to find out what they want. But that communication ahead of time is super important. Somebody just messaged me that, the other day that they delivered photos to somebody or a gallery with the proofs. And then that same person, the client, posted some of the proofs online. And then he told me, how do I, go about fixing this? How do I fix this situation? And I had to tell him, well, that communication ahead of time will really save you more than anything, because after that, after this bad situation happens, you might want to do certain things, for your own integrity or whatever. This isn't my work, but that communication ahead of time is just going to save you more than anything.
Yeah, and I think a big thing in that communication piece is your work and your portfolio, right? Like that's how you're communicating to other people. And if you're very strong in your style, then as you said, people come to know you for that, and they won't probably inquire with you for other things. And so you won't have that hard sort of wall you're trying to go up against to try to prove that what you do is right. I know a lot of people, I get that question a lot from people like, I'd like to do this style, but every time I work with this client, they don't want that. And I think sometimes you've just got to have a look at it from the outside and think, if someone looked at my portfolio, what would they think I do? And if you're offering too many different things, of course they're going to ask you for so many different things. But if you just want one particular style, then it may be that you just have to just share that over and over again.
Yeah, and I know there's going to be people that kind of deliver so many styles, especially in the beginning. I did the same thing, but I think, having that unique style is going to benefit you more than anything, or not necessarily a unique style, but a style that you're known for. I think that's going to help, again, with the people hiring you and expecting, a certain quality.
Yeah, very hard to find a unique style these days. I feel like everything's been done, and especially when you like look around, you can kind of think everything's been done. Have you got any advice for people who are wanting to get into photography and try out styles that they've seen before, but feel like it has been overdone to a point where they don't think they could stand out with that style?
I think no matter, like, kind of on the same vein of this answer, but I think that, see, like you said before, it's hard to find a unique style. So that means that everybody has tried these styles and put them online somewhere, but you always have this personal spin to whatever you're trying out, and just trying your best to kind of provide that unique, in the sense, that unique spin to it, using this model in this location or that, or whatever. Just having your own unique spin on it is going to kind of help you stand out. And you might have, a certain topic that you want to make a video on, and I might have the same topic, but our videos might be completely different because of your way of delivery or my way of delivery. It's just, I think everybody has something to offer. And I think even if they see a style that's been overdone before, still do it. Just because it's overdone doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it. And I'm getting a little frustrated here from my own personal take, because people in the past have told me that, like, oh, this style's already been done before. I'm like, okay, cool, but I haven't tried it. So why shouldn't I try it? Because you told me that it's been done before. So it's so hard. But I think people just need to continue doing things that they like and trying things if they want to try them, rather than let other people dictate what they do.
And I kind of think the internet is so big these days that we can see people have done things elsewhere in the world and think it's just everywhere. But we get caught up as artists, as photographers, in that environment of, we just watch other artists, other photographers, and we don't know that, our clients don't know that that is huge. Like, they don't know that's a big style, and it may not be in your area. There may not be anyone else in your area who does it. And I tell people, why not try it? Why not try it in your style? Like, just because it's just because there is someone else who does it doesn't mean they're going to do it the way that you do it. And I think your answer was great there, of like, everyone will come at it through their own direction, because we all have our own influences, our own experience that we bring into things, and the way we do it may not be exactly the same as other people have done it before.
Yeah. I'm a strong believer in that, because, I might have a certain location. We might be doing the exact same photo shoot, but I just turn away and you do it certain way. And then I grab the exact same gear, same lighting, same subject, same everything. And then I'll have a completely different photo shoot. It's, our own perspectives that we can provide.
And there's so much that goes into it, right? Like, yeah, I've been to those sort of workshops before where I've seen people use the exact same stuff and not get the same results at all. And you think, how did you get that from this? That's so far out of what I would have come up with as an idea in my head. We were just all standing in the exact same spot. It's crazy that that's how it works, but we hold ourselves back from wanting to try new things because we think other people already know how to do them, so we're not going to do them.
Yeah, I agree.
Are you someone who always uses Flash? I know you talked about it before, working with like not with Flash. Is that something that you do often?
Out of the past maybe 14 to 15 years, I've only shot natural light maybe 5 to 10 times, less than 10 times. And that so it kind of answers your question there. But I've always leaned towards Flash, not because of it's a crutch, but there's certain things that I just, like to do that kind of warrant me using a Flash in my work. If it's exposing the background a certain way or something else, or getting richer colored, like again, my personal opinion in certain aspects, then that's kind of always brought me to get a Flash out. I might take a shot in natural light and then I'm like, looks pretty good. Let me see how it looks like with Flash. And then I'll take a picture with the Flash.
It's like certainly harder to bring a lot of Flash along. And I think that's one of the things that I get from a lot of people. They're like, why would I try it? Like, it's so much hard work to bring all the gear out. And especially when people are working on their own. How do you go with that when you're planning a photo shoot? What gear do you need to bring along with you? I feel like I get overwhelmed with like, what do I take with me? I'm just going to have everything with me just in case.
So I have kind of like two answers to that, because one is that I always have my wife who's very, very helpful in assisting me at photo shoots. And I schedule my photo shoots around her schedule so that she can help me and, in any sort of way, holding light or doing something else. But I think if I didn't have her, and that's the second answer, then I probably would be very, very hyper aware of the conditions that I'm going to be working in and the quality of light that I want. And that would dictate what gear to bring. Short version of this to anybody watching is that using an ND filter with your Flash photography can help you use smaller gear for this, very similar, if not the same results that you would use with bigger gear. So that right there, using an ND filter, if I felt like, I don't want to take this big heavy light and Ashley can't help me, my wife can't help me, then maybe I'll take the smaller gear, use an ND filter. And, I'm always balancing these different kind of factors that are going to influence my photo shoot. And I think that kind of dictates what gear that I bring. I can use a smaller Flash that attaches very easily to this small softbox, or I use a bigger Flash that requires a bigger, it's not exactly complicated, but more complicated than the smaller, softbox. And it always influences my decision on what I'm bringing. But I always bring a cart to my photo shoots, and I'm not sure if people utilize that or how popular people use that or how often. But I always use a cart because it's just convenient. It folds, I get all my stuff in there, stuff I might not even use, and it's just like, I get to choose what I want to use.
Yeah, I think it's like one of those things that people are like, oh, I don't want to bring all this stuff. I don't like. It stops me from like moving around because a lot of people think that that's their style. Does that come into play with when you're planning out where to go and what type of images you want to get? Obviously, you're dictated by how much gear you have with you.
Yeah, so I have actually been using a lot of very portable gear, very portable modifiers and lighting lately, to the point where a lot of people, I think that's become unintentionally an attraction to people online, because I was using it because, it's very convenient because it opens it's very small, but it opens pretty big. And it also allows you to, attach portable lights to it. And when I would share even one Instagram or Facebook reel that I shared like about a couple months ago, I think in May, all it was me opening the softbox with one hand, and then that was it. And it got like 1 million views on my Facebook. And I was like, whoa. I was just showing people that it was a really cool softbox, but I didn't expect that. And I think that kind of helps with what you were saying, with that accessibility and that ease of use, and the fact that it can attach a very portable light to it. I think people were like, oh crap, that's super small, very, very portable. That makes me want to use Flash, rather than if I showed a big setup with a bigger softbox and a bigger light and all these different things that are much more complicated. I think that's where that attraction came to, where people were like, oh, this is portable. Maybe I can do it. Maybe I can, go through the hassle of bringing the Flash.
And I think the gear does impact it there. Like a lot of people when they're first starting may not buy the most expensive gear, and it then tends to be more heavy and tends to be larger stuff that they have to drag around, and they're like, oh, this doesn't work properly every time. It's hard to get out. Like it takes forever to get their like stands up or whatever. And they're like, oh, I don't want to ever do this again. But it's like there is an easier way. There is gear out there that's really good. Yes, you may have to spend more for it, but in the longer term, it's going to work much better for you. And if you could just get that across to other people, you'd be like, oh, there's an easier way.
And I always try to tell people if they're wanting to start Flash that, it's totally fine if you fail. I had years of failing, and I always tell people years of me wanting to quit, but I stuck with it. And what I always try to tell them as a bit of way to comfort them if they do a photo shoot and fail is that I can help you. Like, just if you have any photos that you think, did bad at that photo shoot, just send them my way and I can help kind of figure out exactly what went wrong. And I think I try to provide that resource, not just, for the sake of, building a stronger fan base, like, or anything. I just want to help, literally just to help people. Cause again, I never had that. And it's always goes back to that, me not having this source of someone, to help me. And I want to be able to provide that to people whenever I can, if possible. And, so those people who are just kind of like, oh, I don't know if I want to use Flash, they do the photo shoot, they fail. I'm like, I know it's not, some people aren't as comfortable as sending stuff to people they meet online or whatever. But I can provide that, like I always tell them that I struggled for years. I know how it feels. I have bad photos if you want to see them, but I can help, with your work. If you actually want to improve and get better at this, then I can help.
I'm so glad that you gave that answer, because I feel like I've got the exact same answer as well. Like, not having people to help you just drives you to help other people even more. You talked about wanting to stop and wanting to, feeling bad about your work and having done so much work and struggled through things. How did you sort of push through that? How did you get over that, not feeling like your work was so good for a long time?
I think I've always been a curious person and a competitive person. And I want to say at my core that those two things kind of really kept me going. Like, I wanted to quit, but then I'm like, nah, like, you can do it. There's certain things. And again, that curious part of me, I'm super, very curious as a person. And I was like, what went wrong, figuring things out, figuring the problem and figuring out the solutions was that drive that kind of kept me going. Like, I was like, I hate these photos. Why? And then I took there'd be other times where I do photo shoots and I'm like, oh, that went well. Why did it go well? Why did I like this? What is going on in this? And breaking it down in that curious part of me that was just wanting to know what was going on that I either liked or didn't like, that kind of kept me going until the point where it kind of clicked all together. And I was like, oh, this is why. And this is why I like the colors in the background, and even to the point with the editing where I'm like, oh, this editing thing I really like for this reason, and then I kind of implemented it into my workflow. But I would say in 2017 is where one thing super clicked to me where I was like, oh my gosh. And it was as simple as having the light super close to the subject. But I took a photo and I was like, I love this photo. And then I was like, why do I like this photo? And then I was like, the softbox was super, super close. And it was a situation where I took a photo where it was really close. And I took a picture where it was literally like maybe 8 inches to a foot away, like further away. And it didn't have that thing that I really liked. And I was like, oh my gosh, Eureka. And I was really happy with the quality. So I think, yeah, me being curious and figuring out what to do and how to do it better, that competitive nature of me kind of kept me continuing. And I'm just happy that I have that, I guess.
It's great to have something that does drive you. For me, understanding why I like the photos the way I like was so important, because it helps you to do it again. Like, what do I like about this photo? And even other people's work. Like, what do I like about it? Like, why am I inspired by this work? It's not just like, I really like their work and then I try to emulate it and I don't get anywhere close. Like, trying things, and if you get them right, I think that's a learning experience just as much as if you get them. If you don't, you're not quite happy with the results. Yeah.
Yeah. I liked how you said that, because this is like, yeah, it's a lot of times people might think of something being super obvious and then just dismiss it because of that obvious nature. And it's as simple as like, oh, I saw this photo, I like it, but now you can ask yourself why. Why do you like it? And I've asked that, or I've told people before that in the past when they're trying to figure out a style of their own, or what they like. And I'm like, the easiest thing I could tell you to do is to find different styles like of photos that you like, and see not necessarily all flash, but like natural light, flash, studio. See what you like about those, or which one you have a preference for, and I'll kind of give you more of an insight of the why. And yeah, and it's just like, again, it's just like, oh, I like that picture, but why? Why do you?
You said before about the example between the two images of having your softbox really close versus just a bit further away. Is that something that you implement into your practice all the time, of allowing yourself a bit of time to experiment, even at the end after you've got images that you're happy with, just to have something to go home to compare?
Yes. And I'll be honest with everybody here listening that there's some photo shoots I've done over the years where I never shared them because I experimented. And again, honest to you guys, I didn't get to the level that I wanted with those photos. They might have been nice to the person I was taking the photos of. Again, back, I did that years ago with natural light. Like, they liked the photos, they thought they were good, but it wasn't the quality that I wanted, and that's why I never shared them online. And I think that is something that's never going to really change for me. But I always want to at least experiment whenever I can, because again, yeah, there's some stuff that I'm just scared to try. So if I do a photo shoot and then I'm like, oh, you know what, I try to be honest with them. I'm like, tell them, can I try this? I might not like the photos, but that was something I learned hard way, because I'll be honest again, super honest. Years ago, I did a photo shoot. I didn't like the photos, and I didn't deliver them to the subject. It was a model collab, and then she got frustrated as to the why I never shared them online or this one. But it was something out of my comfort zone, and that experience told me that, you know what, again, be very honest with people up front of time, and that communication is super key. So I can tell them, hey, I'm going to do a photo shoot, but I'm experimenting with this or that, so I might not share them online. And then that hard lesson was, the lesson was learned. And then ever then, since then, over the years, when I wanted to experiment with something, that's when I would, tell them, hey, I'm not going to, maybe I'm not going to post this stuff if I don't really like it. So then, yeah. But experimenting is really important to do. I'll be honest, I don't do it often.
Is there anything that you have been experimenting with recently? Any new styles, any new gear even that you're trying out that you don't normally go to, just to kind of see how it works?
One thing that I really want to do more, that if you look at my work, you'll see that it's not really super present, is adding a lot of gels and color to my work. There's stuff that, like, I typically like to see what's going on in a scene that I'm at, and kind of implementing that into the shot. But what's always been a struggle for me, and still is a struggle for me, is seeing how I can add color to it. Maybe there's this color that would, complement this bridge that I'm on, or the outfit that they're wearing. Maybe this color, I could just pop that in there. But then again, it's also an extra layer of difficulty. So it's like, I have one light, and that light was, again, with people wanting to start flash, they're like, oh, having to bring all this stuff. Well, the max I'll typically do is 2 light setups. But then now that I want to add gels and stuff and add color into it, I'm like, okay, then that's going to require this little stand here for that one, that little stand for this one. And adding that extra layer of difficulty, plus not really being comfortable with adding or seeing the color in my head before I implement it, that's what kind of prevents me from continuing to experiment with that more. But this year, I would say I did experiment with it a good amount, and I was patting myself on the back every time, because I was like, oh, wow, that looks cool because of that color that you added. But it's still a struggle for me.
I think gels are such an interesting thing, because I hear a lot about them, and like a lot of the feedback that I get from other people is like, you're kind of changing the environment. You're changing what's actually there. It doesn't look like it's real. I'm sure you get that all the time. How do you approach people who say that, Flash doesn't look like it's real?
Oh my gosh, that is something I still get to this day. Somebody commented, "Oh yeah, there's 2 suns in your location apparently," and I'm like, I I wanted to, I'm like, swear, but it's as easy as me telling them, I could definitely take natural light and shoot for you with more of a realistic look, I guess. But that's not the point of why I started to use photography, like or photography, flash photography. I wanted to do things I couldn't do with just natural light, and what that made me more interested, to be honest, because I was like, oh, instead of being limited to this location because the natural light's perfect here, maybe I can shoot over here where it's not ideal and still take a good photo because I'm now adding lighting. I have more control. And I think it's just a matter of the people that make those comments who are like, it's not real, whatever. I understand where they're coming from, but at the same time, that's not my goal. Like, I'm not aiming to take a photo where it's super realistic. A lot of my work, if not all, is like backlit with the sun, because I want that subject to be completely in the shade, and I use flash to fill it in. And also, it's a free rim light. It's a free 2 light setup if when you only have one light. But I'm not aiming for realistic. Is the short answer to that. I've taken shots where the flash maybe misfired, and it was a natural light image. And I, out of curiosity, I edited it to be, like if it was just an actual natural light shot, I edited it that way. And it was a certain look. It wasn't really nice, but it wasn't my goal. So, I had a goal in mind. I took the shot. I was happy with that shot. So was the client. But, that other shot was just more of like kind of reiterating the fact that I would like to shoot with with that exact spot, with that background, with all these different things. And, that's why I use the light setup, so I can get this exposure in the background, that. And if I shot with just natural light, I'd be limited in certain ways. And I'm not looking to do that. I want to limit myself. I want to be able to do whatever I want.
And I think it is a skill to be able to go the other way as well. Like, there are so many different styles you could do. Like, we would never compare someone doing outdoor flash to indoor studio flash. Like, they're not meant to be the same thing. Like, they're very different. And so people just in their head think that everything's got to be the same way, but you have a good understanding of what you're training for in that way. Like, we would never think about an athlete who played one particular sport and say that they're not doing it right because we're comparing it to a completely other sport. Like, yes, they still play sport, but we're not playing the same sport. You know what I mean? So you know what you're training for, and you know what that end result is. And if you don't think an image is representative of what you want it to be, it could be the best natural light image in the world, but if that's not what you want, then at the end of the day, you probably still wouldn't be happy with it.
Yeah, I like the way that you compared that, because that's so true. Like, it's just different. It's a different style, or in that aspect, a different sport. So why are you comparing it to that other thing? So yeah.
Yeah, and it's not to say that that's bad. And I think that that's one of the things, like, people are so quick to judge and put people down for a style of work that they just don't know how to do, or that they don't enjoy either. And that's okay. Art is art,
Yeah, I'm just always trying to be very open with other people's stuff. I get the rude comments, and I always try to, for a split second or maybe a little bit longer, I'm like, why did they comment this way? What was their goal? And more often than not, it's just to be a troll. It's just to be, negative. But even then, just because that curious part of me, I was like, why? Why did they feel the need that it was just like itching to them? Like, I need to make this comment. I need to make this comment. I need to share my unsolicited opinion. But, a lot of times it's just a troll being a troll.
I feel like it's the blessing and the curse of being so curious, and also having that drive just to do well. And when you hear from other people that it's not what they wanted, or they didn't think it was that good, you're like, why did they say that? Like, I haven't heard that on any of my other work recently. Why did they say it on this particular piece of work? And then you're like, oh, maybe I did this wrong, and you'll go back and forth.
Yeah, and I just want to say, it just reminded me real quickly of a time where I spoke at a Sony event. I used to be a Sony ambassador, so I did an event in LA for a camera store, Sammy's Camera, and I remember I talked about, I think it was something about taking photos at night. And then I remember, like, people were learning, and I was also still very much more nervous than I am, now. I'm still very kind of a shy guy, but much better now than before. But I remember at the end of it, a lady came up to me and she was like criticizing it. She's like, well, why didn't you do this? Because that's not how it looked like, or this isn't blah, blah, blah. And I was like, but that wasn't my goal. Like, I wanted to add lighting because now the person stands out and I didn't want to have to sacrifice a position. But part of me understands that sometimes people are coming from a good place, but at the same time, I need to educate them as to, that's not my preference, that's your preference. And I had a certain goal in mind. And that's why I did the things I did. But again, other people more often than not are just, I want to share my opinion.
Yeah, and they don't have a place to share their ideas, and so they'll try to use your platform. And I think that goes really well into the whole education aspect of it. I know that I get that a lot from when I share the way that I do things, and people will come at me and say, "Well, that's not how I do it." I'm like, "Well, we don't even work in the same style. Like if you do that in your style of photography with the gear that you've got, that's cool. That also works." But that was not what I was trying to get across with this, trying to help other people who aren't you.
You share a lot of things online that I'm like, you're brave, because I'm not necessarily like, I'm too scared, I guess. So you're definitely braver than me to share these different methods and techniques in your Instagram reels. And I'm like, wow, he's explained it so well, but I'm wondering who's going to comment now negatively about it. And again, kudos, because you share a lot of helpful information online, in my opinion. And I know that there's going to be some backlash from the more super, super technical people. But again, yeah, they're just wanting to use your platform to say, oh, I know how to do this. And this is exactly true for this reason. But yeah, I just need to give you props, because holy crap, that's just so hard to put yourself out there online.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I think that we'll see if I'm still around in like years, because I feel like you've been here for so long and had to handle it. And I feel like it's starting to, it impacts me still. But I have to remind myself, like you said before, like, who are we helping? Like, that I'm trying to help the person who was just starting, who didn't have anyone. I'm not trying to help the person who's been around for years and already has their style. Like, if you do it a certain way, cool. But I do go back and forth when I think about ideas. I'm like, how can I frame this to not offend people who do know the correct way? Because sometimes, as you know, I'm sure when you explain things, you've got to sort of water things down for either the person you're trying to get to or the algorithm even. Like if you started speaking to over people, it's not going to do well. If it drags out too much, it won't do well. So you've got to condense things down. You've got to remove things. How do you juggle that with your own stuff and your, behind the scenes work that you go through a lot of your own sort of photo shoots, walking through how you did things? How do you balance what to include and what not to include? I could sit here and talk for an hour and explain everything I did, but some things just, if you're not there yet, I feel like for me, myself, I've removed things because I know they're not at that stage yet. I have a good understanding of who I'm talking to, so I sometimes remove things and I think it's not going to work for everyone, and then I do get that lit of other people say, well, that's not technically correct. I'm like, I know, I just had to strip it out, but...
That's a good question, because yeah, I think I do that, but sometimes I don't kind of vocalize it, because I'm here just, I do a lot of filming and stuff. I do everything on my own, so I don't have anybody to help me with a script or something. And I know bigger YouTubers have like editors and stuff and different things like that to help. But for me, I'm thinking of everything. So my wife does help in ways that she can, like holding a light, or she's like, what else do you need me to do? And then I'm here juggling all my brain. But I think for me, it's if I could break it down, it's just thinking of like a hierarchy, kind of like a list of the most important aspects, and the way that it can digest easy. Like also, like, so if it's high up on the list of importance and digestion, I guess, then I think that's something that's going to stay there. But then if I know that if one thing is going to be take more time to explain, then I know that automatically means that it might become more harder to kind of understand and digest, and it kind of gets lower on my list because of that. I remember one specific instance where I did a video talking about ND filters. I made several videos over maybe a month or two, because people just didn't understand the concept that I was trying to explain. And maybe even you would disagree with me, maybe not, I don't know. But it was just about ND filters specifically, and I did my best to explain everything clearly, as super clearly as possible. And I just found that subject was one that will kind of go over people's heads no matter what. So that's why I was like, you know what? If I need to make a video, maybe I'll just talk about high-speed sync and the fact that you can use any shutter speed, and it's easier for that, and not having to add elements to your lens. But I think I think it's always going to be that importance and that digestion of how easy it is to understand that kind of just dictates what I put in my videos.
And I definitely have the advantage of I talk about one specific thing in every piece of content that I share, and I don't have to elaborate on every different thing. Like you go through everything from start to end. I'm sure there's a lot that you do in your head that you don't even think about. Like that was a step that other people wouldn't understand. I'm just making very short pieces of here's this specific thing. So I probably could make a piece just about ND filters and it probably would work because it's like very, like I don't explain anything else. Just here's how ND filters would work with Flash. That would work. But in the context of you're out there taking photos and there's so many other things to explain, I'm sure it's hard to know what to prioritize.
Yeah, so like you said before, like what kind of dictates what I add in my videos, it kind of also dictates like if I'm doing a workshop or a photo walk, it kind of like instead of using a smaller light with an ND filter, maybe I will actually bring the bigger light and use high speed sync and just tell people just use a faster shutter rather than put this ND filter on, change it to this stops, and it adds that layer of complexity, and I think it's gonna get people a little bit lost. So that's why I was like, let's go for the easier thing because it is going to be just better overall for the entire experience. So that's another factor there.
You also, I want to give you your credit for creating so much content where you just like talk and just explain things. Like I feel like if I'm unscripted, I go everywhere. I still get a lot out of your content when you're just like talking, and like you said, you don't have anyone to put scripts together. Like the 100% of the reason why I script is because I feel like if I didn't script everything out, I would go off on track and I wouldn't end up talking about the things that I wanted to talk about, and it wouldn't probably come across well. I'm pretty awkward unscripted, I think. But you've been kind of doing that for so long and just talking. How did you build up that practice of getting so good at just talking to camera and being yourself and presenting ideas and understanding what to talk about when you've been there for 10 like minutes talking?
I think it was only in the past year or two where I did really start to not script everything that I'm going to say, but have like bullet points. But I think it's really important to kind of do that. You figure out what works best for you, because I used to do those videos where I was unscripted and I was like talking for an hour long. And then, my camera, my Sony a7 III, which I still use, it records 30 minutes and then it cuts off. So I have to keep conscious of that as well, where I'm like, I'm talking to like I'm hitting 30 minutes. Maybe I gotta hit record again. But being unscripted, it can help in a sense of appearing more natural. But if your goal is to help people, then you can sacrifice even just a little bit. It's not even noticeable, but to me it is. But sacrificing a little bit of that natural way of talking and being a little bit more structured to make a more scripted video. And I think that me figuring out a happy balance between those two things is what kind of kept me being not too scripted, but also not just rambling. So I think whenever one example that I always bring up with the teleprompters is there's a tech channel called Linus Tech Tips. And for years, and I think still to this day, maybe he would use a teleprompter, but I would see, and years ago, he would have like a button underneath his table or something. And you would see him his eyes just kind of just scanning. Like I would pick up on it. It's not super noticeable, but it is noticeable. And I would just see him, and he would also be like doing like this, hitting the button to kind of just, I don't know, change the speed of the teleprompter. But I was like, I don't want to do that. When I saw that, I was like, I want to appear natural if I can, because it was too robotic in some ways. And so yeah, it's just a matter of being comfortable with the material, and then also not being too scripted. I'll have bullet points to kind of talk about why you use an ND filter for this reason, or why you put the flash close for that reason. And then I kind of just still kind of ramble a little bit, but I do my best to kind of, say it in a way that's easier to understand, rather than me being like, more or less, way less structured, where I'm like, it's cool because the light's cooler when it's up, just a way that not going to help anybody. I try to be helpful, so I'm trying to keep that in mind.
I also understand the irony of me kind of saying that I love your unscripted style and that the way that you talk, but then I complained about how I'm like, I'm not able to be unscripted because I would go everywhere. But I'm like, we're so hard on ourselves that, you know, we don't ever look to other people and say, oh, I could do that too. But I'm glad that you brought up about the whole like having a prompt up, because I see it all the time. I'm like, oh, I could never do that. Like that just seems so like when there's no connection involved there, because I can tell you're speaking off a prompter. And I drew a lot of inspiration from MKBHD when I was first starting. I think like Marquez made a video about not using a prompter, but really being scripted. Like he's very scripted in what the stuff he says. And I still do this. Like I script and I memorize one bit at a time, and then to deliver that to camera. Like I don't read off a prompter, because I was like, it comes across so much more like how I would actually speak, and you hear your intonation like change when you use a prompter. If I'm reading a script, I know that that's not how I would really speak. And I wanted it to come across so much, just I wanted to be me, but still I needed that script to make sure I hit my
It's funny that you mentioned him, because that is so very true. I actually do that as well. Like I'll think, okay, how do I want to say this? And sometimes, and I know I mentioned bullet points, but there are times in the past where, and I think it was more helpful, so maybe I should do this more, where I did like script that little paragraph, and then I'm kept in mind, can I memorize all this in one sentence in one go? And then how can I clip, to the next, segment? And I think it definitely did help me. So maybe I'll implement that more. And I think specifically with Marquez, he uploaded a video, I don't want to say a month or two ago, talking about how he makes his videos. And in that part, it showed like it showed the whole team creating the video with him. And they went to the editing part, and then it showed parts where he was reading to himself, memorizing it. And he was like, blah, 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 blah. And then he looked at the camera and said it. And I was like, oh, that's cool. He just memorizes the little sections, and then he like says it. And then I thought that was awesome. I was also thinking a little too much, because my brain works that way. I was like, but what if he's on location at an Apple event and he is limited in time? Does he memorize it still, or does he teleprompter, or does he read off of something? I was thinking too much about it. But
yeah, I'm always like trying to understand, how are they, like what's going on behind the scenes there? I want to know like what's inside their head. So it's interesting to hear, your process, but also like being able to pull things from other people and be like, that might work for you. That's not going to work for me. And I've tried, but it also goes back to experimenting. Try it. And if it doesn't work for you, I get a lot of people as well tell me to change my style and to go off script, to go like share more personality in my own work. And I think that's one of the things that I've tried to do, but I always want to provide value to people. And that's why I've scripted my work, and I want to make sure every piece is helpful to people. But I think that comes at the cost of maybe sometimes not sharing as much personality in my content, or sharing as much about what I do in my normal life, I guess, in my day-to-day. You also share a lot of content, and every piece of yours I think is like just like educational. There's no like vloggy stuff. Here's what I did today around the house. Like that's not whereas I see some people do that, and it's like I'm wondering how you juggle that. Has that always been something that you were very targeted on from the start, of like, I'm just going to give value in everything that I do?
I think it's only recently, in the past couple of years, maybe like 3, or sometimes actually longer than that, now that I think about it. But I'm trying to do it more, but I'm trying to add more of, like you said, the personality part, and add more important people to my life. Like, for example, just exactly in my last upload on YouTube, I was doing a video on using a speedlight in bright sun. But I was at my nephew's house, but across the street, just so that it wasn't, showing their street or whatever. But he came out to, I don't know, get the mail or take the trash out. But then he saw that it was windy, so he held the light. And then I'm here talking to the camera, like, being educational. And then he's in the background, and he was going like this, like that, and just going like that, and being funny, however he wants to be. And I thought, I could probably crop in, because I was recording 4K. So I was like, I could crop in and make sure that he doesn't show. But at the same time, I don't care. Like, I like the fact that he was being funny. He's important to me. I like his character. I want to be able to show it. I thought it was funny too. So I left it in the video. And then somebody even commented with 3 thumbs up. And then they put the timestamp to that part where he was doing that. He was just going like that. And I think I haven't always done that, added more things like that in my videos. But it's been something over the past, again, just recent years, where I was like, you know what? don't take everything too seriously. Be helpful, be educational, but there's ways to kind of find, ways to introduce your personality or people that are important to you into your videos. And I want to be able to do that more. And I was thinking about one time where years ago, I did a review of a backpack. I think this was 2016, maybe, or 17. And then my nephew, same nephew, but he was much younger. He was 5 or 6. And he like entered my house unexpectedly, and I'm like, Ryan, and then he comes up to me and he's like, hey, and he shows up in the video. I'm like, say bye, Ryan, say bye. And then so I added that into that video, and I was very, very happy, and it's still very important to me that I did that, because if anything, it was a moment of time that I captured from somebody who's important to my life, and I thought that was something that kind of keeps coming back to me every now and then when I see those little moments that I did over the years. And I just wish I had done it more, because I started photography to document, and just purely to document before phones and stuff were super popular with cameras. And I think doing a lot of educational stuff has kind of taken time away unintentionally, unconsciously, from documenting, moments of life with my family. And I think so that's what, if my family members can be part of my videos, or my wife, then, going forward, I think I want to add that in some way, in any way, because it's important to me. Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up. I think it's so important to be able to put stuff of yourself in there. And I think about, like, what do I enjoy from other people? I like those little unscripted bits, like when you do have someone else who turns up in a piece of your content, or you are a bit off script and you're having a bit of more of a joke, or talking about things that happened, because again, it's not only for them, but for you to look back on in years to come. Like, you've got so much content now to go back on, that would be an evolution of you, not only as an artist, but as a human as well. Like the way that you do things, your style has changed a lot over the years. Like, to be able to look back on that, the way you're speaking, it comes through, so important to be able to look back. And I tell people, like, even if you don't think you're ready to start, just start creating anything, because even if it's not for someone else, just for you.
Mm-hmm. It's so true. Just starting, it's, again, super easy advice, but it's super important as well. Like, just start. Like, so many people I know, they said, oh, I'm gonna make a YouTube video because I don't speak Spanish, but this other photographer in my area does, and they're like, maybe I could make some videos in Spanish for people. And I'm like, yes, do it. If I knew Spanish, my videos would be Spanish and English. But the fact that I don't kind of, hinders that. But he wanted to make his channel, I think 2017 or 18. And it's already 2025. So him not starting prevented him from making, any sort of videos. So just start and you'll learn. Yeah.
I think I made my first YouTube video in 2019, I think. It's not out there for anyone to look at, but I still have it. It's good to be able to have that to look back on. But I think that I was so caught up back then. I was like, well, what are other people going to think about this? But it's the real beauty of starting, is that no one cares. Like, no one is like, you're so small that no one is like looking at you apart from you. And the only critique comes from you. Like, no one else is going on there saying, this is bad, this is horrible. You're just holding yourself back so much. So if anything, if you eventually grow and you're not happy with it and it's not representative, then yeah, you can archive it or whatever. But you still have it at least. And that was the starting. And it's like, I tell people all the time, how do you improve? Well, you have to start. If you don't want to start, then I can't help you. Like, you've got to get over that first hurdle. It's hard, because so many people have ideas and they just don't start on them.
Yeah, that's super. Such a hard step to do. Like, you just start, and the people who criticize you, did they start? I doubt it. Because, otherwise they would be working on their own stuff rather than criticizing you. And one thing I forgot to mention here is that my very first actual video where I wanted to make education, rather than the other ones where I screen recorded and maybe did a tip here and there. But I recorded it in mono audio. So you only hear it in one freaking ear. And I remember learning, that was a hard lesson, never did that again. But I remember people in the comments were like, hey, I can only hear in one ear. Oh, like I thought I was not hearing it. It was muted because I only put one in. And so, yeah, I started and I learned from that and I got feedback on it and I improved. So yeah, just start and you'll learn eventually how to improve the quality.
And it feels like the bar is so high these days that you can't afford to get anything wrong. You can't afford to not, be at that standard when you're just hopping in. But like we talked about before, just because like it should be inspiring to you that other people have been able to do this and make it work. It's not that they've already done it before and there's too many people, so how am I ever going to stand out? I think that there's so much space for everyone to come at it through their own style and you could talk about the same stuff that I talk about, that you talk about, but come at it at a completely different angle, and it would work probably.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I want to just reiterate that too, to put extra emphasis on that. Just do what you want. Just do what you want out there. I really don't like people telling other people they can't do something. And just because of their own fears, insecures, opinions, that you're preventing somebody from doing something that they might really enjoy. So I know it's a very touchy subject. I'm trying to figure out why, but yeah, I like people having fun with their photography and doing stuff. And when you think too much about it, sometimes it can take away that fun part, that aspect of carefree. So yeah, just do what you want. Everybody out there listening, just have fun.
I think I get so passionate about it because I did do that a lot. Like I started so many times. Like I started, then stopped. I was like, no, this is not good. I'll just stop for a year. Then started again. I was like, I'm on again, and then I just, no, this is not very good again. And I think if I would have just stuck with it any of those times, I probably could have done something way earlier than I did. But it wasn't until I realized that, there were other people, and I spoke with other people, and they were like, no, like this can work. Like I was in that exact same position. Like this is how it's meant to be. And I'm like, this is like, I'm supposed to be feeling these things. Like I'm supposed to be feeling like my work isn't up to the standard of everyone else, or that it is awkward. It is hard. Like there is so much that goes into it. And I just didn't realize. And it wasn't until, I'd spoken to a couple of other people. And that's why I think this is so important to share with other people, because so many people don't know that that's just the reality. Like if you're feeling that, we all felt that.
Yeah, some people are like, how did you get so comfortable talking to the camera? And I'm like, I edit for a reason. Like there's parts where I might say something well awkwardly or crack my voice or something. And I'm like, let me cut that and say that again. But then I keep the video rolling. So you only see the best parts. But obviously, with me being, very honest and truthful, there's that aspect where I'm like, maybe I didn't say this, correctly, or maybe my voice cracked, but I don't care. But also there's that part where if it's getting in the way of people digesting it, my voice cracked at a very important word, then it's like, maybe I should re-record that. So yeah, just, I'm just happy that I was able to eventually find out a workflow that works best for me, because yeah, it can be hard, but yeah, it's just find out what works best for you.
I feel like sometimes I should share the uncut, like, recording of everything that I do. I'm like, I edit out so much. You have no idea how much stuff gets edited out. Like anytime I make a mistake or I go back over it again, I like repeat the same thing. Like it's but people don't see it. They're just like, oh, you're so perfect on camera. How do you speak so well? I'm like, I still don't think I do. And you'll probably always feel that way. You've just got to learn to push yourself through it. I'm wondering, in terms of like inspiration for other people, what are some of the really cool opportunities that you've had? You've obviously done a lot. You talked about being a Sony ambassador before. You've done workshops. You've spoken to WPPI before. Like, what are these? What are some of the cool opportunities that stand out for you that only probably came about from putting yourself out there? I think it's so important to recognize the things you can achieve when you do push through those hurdles.
So the easiest answers for me, because I think these are the actual answers, are the time that I went with Sony to Japan to take pictures. And that was still mind-boggling to me before it happened, during it, and after, because Japan was always on my list of the one place that I wanted to visit. I'm not very much a travel bug kind of person, but I was like, Japan is one where I would like travel, and I would love to just see it all and take it all in. And back as a Sony ambassador, I don't think they do this anymore after COVID, but back then, every year they would get all the Sony collectives, because there's two levels of ambassadors. The influencers are called collectives, and that's what I was. And then there's the Sony artisans, which are like full-time working professionals, but sometimes that same kind of quality, that requirement was still kind of affected into the collectives. There were full-time working professionals in the collectives, but for the collective specifically, they would choose three locations to travel every year, and then at each location, they would choose 10 photographers that were in the collective to go to those spots. And I applied to none of them until the Japan one. I was like, I want to go to Japan. So I applied to that and I got it. I remember the exact situation. I was like gonna use the bathroom and I got the email, and then I was like, oh my gosh. And I like yelled to my wife and I was like, look, read it. I didn't even say it, what happened, but I was like, read it. And then I was like, I showed her the phone and she read it and she was like, what? And that was easy. The number one experience that was the best experience from putting myself out there. All the backlash, whatever, who cares? I went to Japan, Sony paid for it, and they took us so many places. I got little sleep that week, but it was worth it. I'm not going to go to Japan ever again on somebody else's dime. Maybe not, but that was just a blessing. But yeah, that was probably the easiest answer for me.
How did you come to be an ambassador or in this Oni collective?
And again, I don't want to be like, oh, I got lucky, not give you a helpful answer. But back then, one thing that they did offer, but they don't anymore, which kind of sucks, is that they had an application form on their website. And I think for one, that was one thing that kind of helped. But another thing was me having a YouTube channel, and not just having my YouTube channel, but putting myself out there on different photography platforms. So social media like Facebook and Instagram, I was putting my stuff out there, tagging, certain businesses, tagging Sony. And again, I'm not, hiding anything, but one thing I think that did help was I added so many Sony affiliated people on my Facebook. I added sent friend requests. And then when I would put my work out there, because they were my friend on Facebook, it might cross their eyes. So I think by adding them on Facebook and adding a lot of people of, Sony ambassadors and stuff on Facebook, I think that helped as well. So the application part, the fact that I added them on social media was another part. And I think another part was actually face-to-face, like meeting them in person. I go to WPPI photo conference and I go to other conferences every year. But in that first year and the second year, I think it was more to like see if I could put myself out there and meet these people. And I'm a very shy person, so I definitely, that was a hurdle that I had to get through. But I was like, what? I want to meet these people, see the Sony booth. I know that they have booths for all the different brands, and see, just shake their hand. It's just see, they can see you, meet you. And I remember the first instance that I had with the Sony person, I was like, oh, asking them, who's the marketing person? And they're like, oh, that's that person. And then I go to them and then I'm like, hi, my name is Francisco. I just wanted to introduce myself. And, I'm very interested in becoming a Sony ambassador. And I think it's definitely like the situation where you might have heard something 100 times that day. And then you kind of just got used to it, and just like, you wouldn't have given the same answer or said the answer in the same way to the first person, to the last person. And I was like the last person. So the person was like, yeah, here's, a card, you can count, blah, blah, blah. And then I remember feeling so bad after that experience that I was like, let me just use this as best as I can as fuel for fire underneath me, to kind of just make sure that this was a embarrassing experience for me personally, where I'm like here, like, oh, wanting to get to know them. And they're like, they're very dismissive. But it's not any fault to them. They might have, again, heard that 100 times that day. But it made me want to be to the point where I post stuff online. I, post content this way or that way, so that people would know me more and more. And I wouldn't have to introduce myself, if, not to the point where like, oh, they know me automatically, but just to the point where at least they know of me. And because that was it didn't feel too good. But it was, again, not fault to them. But I just wanted to make sure that I put myself out there more and more, to the point where more people are familiar with me. And then obviously that became something that actually did happen, because I applied, I think it was either December or January of December of 2026 or January of 2027 or 2017, my bad, 2016, 2017. And then I got an email on May 2nd and I remember the specific date because I was like, whoa, they're like, yeah, we're interested in you becoming an ambassador. How, would you like to be ambassador? I was like, hell yeah. So that's, and it came at the perfect time because I was feeling pretty down about the fact that I wasn't like I felt like I was being too harsh on myself. I was like, man, I need to be doing more. I need to do this. And at the time, I actually I was deciding on picking up a Canon, a Nikon, and a Sony so that I could help more people. And then Sony came up and picked me up. And then that's where I was like, okay, you can only use Sony. I was like, okay, fine. but that's a little bit of a long story, but it's probably the best way to explain how I became an ambassador, because that same story now probably would not help as much as it did back then, because they don't even have their application up anymore on their website. And I think they more look at just social media numbers now. And back then I was putting myself out there in certain ways and I was getting attention on this way and that way. But I think continuing to help and try to be educational kind of really engraved it in their mind that this guy, I always give him credit to Sony for believing in me at a time where I didn't super believe in myself, because I had only, I think, around 4,000 followers on my Instagram, which again, everybody around me at the first Sony event that they had that year, Sony Kando, everybody else that was in the collective, boom, 50,000, boom, 150,000, boom, 1 million followers. I was like, why did they pick me? So I was so intimidated.
That's a really cool but scary story. I'm like trying to picture myself as an introvert walking up to someone and being like, hey, could I be an ambassador? Or even just talking to them at all, like at an event when they're like, who are you? I've always, I think it's a great thing for, introverts to have an online space where we can share work. Because my whole thing has always been like, get your work so good that they can't ignore you. Like, become so good online because I can control that. And I have been very fortunate for brands to come to me and ask to work together. Like, I get so scared to go out to talk to anyone. And it was interesting. I went to a YouTube event here in Australia like 2 weeks ago. And it was just like a broad event, nothing to do with the style of work we do. And I was like, I don't know anyone else in this room. And it was just like, I don't think they knew me. And I was like, oh, I can't go and talk to anyone. Like, it's so weird. But I feel like when I walk into like a more like photography event, people recognize me and approach me to talk. And then I'm fine. I'm like, oh, okay, I can chill. I'm in my environment here. But going out of what you do and going up to people and introducing yourself, that whole idea scares me.
Glad you mentioned introvert, because I still very much consider myself very much an introvert. And some people are like, well, what, how were you able to go to this conference? And I'm like, or that, whatever, do this. It's a topic I'm familiar with. And that very much gives me energy. It does. Like, that shared interest. Like, it just really helps so much, because there's times where, again, it could be a non-photography related event and I'm doing my best to, be with my wife for this event, for whatever, that might be a workplace event for her. And I just automatically I'm losing energy every single second. And I'm like, I'm overthinking every single second. And it's just like, all that tends to just get pushed back when it's a photography. And I'm just so happy that I have that outlet because even though I'm an introvert, I like talking to people, but it's always hard. I always overthink, okay, they're talking. Now, do I say something now? Or maybe I'm going to say it too weird. Or maybe I should think about the words I'm going to say. And it's just so many things. And it's just, it prevents me from even speaking up at all. And so then it's always that case where, why are you so quiet? And I was like, because I didn't know how to say the things I wanted to say at a certain time. And this person was talking for this amount of time. So maybe I just, so many thoughts go through my brain. And I'm not sure if it's exactly introvert or if it's something else. I never got myself tested for anything, but it's just so much thoughts go through my head. And it's just, photography kind of just helps clear all that cluster and just allows me to actually be the person that I want to be.
As soon as you work out what that is, you have to let me know, because I feel like that's what I've got to, whatever that was just like, you were just like speaking to me just then about, I feel the exact same way. And I hate sharing it because sometimes I'm like, I don't want to turn people away from feeling like they can come up and talk to me, because I love it when people come up and have a chat to me. Like I've shared about it before, and people are like, oh, would you rather me not talk to you? Like I'm a bit of an introvert too. I'm like, no, please come and talk to me. Like that's great. Like in that environment, I'm fine. I just struggle to go up in an environment where I'm so out of my depth. And to put myself out there, that's so hard. And I think that's something that other people can relate to as well. So I like being able to share it because it's not just you that feels out of place at those events.
Yeah, some people have messaged me. They're like, I saw you and I wanted to say hi, but I was too scared because you were talking to other people. And I was like, don't do that. Like, you could just be like, hi, just a quick tap on my shoulder and be like, hi, I know you're talking. I'm sorry, but I wanted to just say hi because I'm a fan of yours or whatever. You helped me this way. And I always appreciate every single interaction like that. But I always feel bad for the people who are like, I was too shy to say hi. And I was like, oh, you could have just tapped me on the shoulder and I would have been like, oh, hi, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, I understand it though.
I'm always like really big respect to anyone that does come up and say hi, because I probably wouldn't have done it when I was starting. You talked about not being a Sony ambassador anymore. Any particular reason that happened, or was it just over time? I'm just intrigued.
How much time do we have left? Let's see. The very short, or as short as I could probably make it be. And this is all still truth. It's still my truth, whatever. Sony, I feel they don't prioritize portrait work, and specifically, even more rarely, portrait work with flash. And that's all I do. And I felt like over the years being an ambassador for them from 2017 to May to 2022. And I actually left them. I told them, take me off. I had a couple more months on my contract. I was like, take me off because of these reasons. And what it was is basically seeing, and I went through the last 1,000 posts that they had made on social media on Sony Alpha account on Instagram. I counted about maybe 20, a little bit less than 20 portraits. And of those portraits, it was about 3 or 4 of them were with flash. And I told them, this is all I do. I know that you guys don't prioritize that for these reasons. And it just, me being the person that I like to help people. If I'm going to be ambassador for a company, utilize me, please. I just want to help. How can I help you? And what it felt with Sony is what the program was meant to be with Sony was it's going to be a mutually beneficial program to build you up and build the company up. When I got with them, they did help me, honestly, in giving me that confidence to continue and be helpful and stuff, and gave me opportunities for this, doing this or that. Photo walk over here in San Antonio, photo walk during Photo Plus, which is a conference that happened in New York, but doesn't happen anymore. And I'm still super grateful for that, for them doing that, believing in me. But it felt like over time, they weren't utilizing me. They weren't sharing any of my work. They were giving me less opportunities. Sure, I did have that Japan trip. And again, that's another reason why I was super, super surprised, because they didn't seem to kind of care to promote me in any way. And again, it's just me wanting to help. And then me being part of a team, but not putting me out to play, basically, is like, what am I doing here on the bench when another company might want me to go out and play and, help the team out? So it was affecting me mentally. I think strongly in 2021, towards the end of it too, I voiced my concerns with them, saying, hey, you guys came out with some lenses, some portrait lenses. I would love to have had the opportunity to got it early, make a review on it, did my best to, you guys tell me if you want it to just be completely my own types of images, or maybe tailor it in this way and that way, and I'll do that. And then just getting passed up on those opportunities kind of messed with me. And I voiced my concerns, and they said that they would listen, that they would give me these lenses for that reason. And they never did. They never followed up with their, the solutions to my concerns. And so it got to the point where I was grinding my teeth in my sleep, which I never did before. And then it was because of my frustration with Sony. And so then I told them, just drop me. just yeah, it's just affected me too much to the point where I want to help you guys and I believe in your products, but you guys just not utilizing me and giving me less opportunities every year is just kind of messing with my brain. And I need this clear cut kind of, just disconnect from you guys in this way. So please drop me. And that's exactly what happened. And thankfully they were understanding of the situation. And I wish they did make some changes into the of the program after I left because of my concerns, because of my departure. But they still have some work to do, in my opinion. And I just wish that they made some changes in their and who dictates what goes online and what gets promoted. I still wish to that day that that was different, a little bit different. But at the same time, I still believe in the products. I still use an old Sony A7R3, which a lot, there's A7R4 now, A7R5. But I just wish that if they were to promote portrait work, it's not only when a new lens comes out. And because that seems to be the case to this day, I still believe it's my honest truth. I still believe this, but I just felt like they weren't utilizing me and it was messing with me. So I told them, just cut me, please, because it's not gonna benefit me when this program is supposed to be beneficial for both of us. So
I'm sure that was a big decision to have to make, but also one that I'm glad it was well considered in the way of like, well, what am I getting out of this equally? I think a lot of people can sign up to those programs just feeling like just being involved with the brand is enough for them. Like, and then it becomes about ego and like what they want to do for themselves and what it says about them and their work. But for you, it's like, well, I want to help people. How can I do that? And if you're not giving me opportunities to help people and that's what I want to do, well, why be here?
It was very hard. I in some ways I regret it. In some ways I don't. But I think overall I still would have made that decision because it was sure I have this accolade and it was hard to obtain this, but it's affecting me too negatively to kind of appreciate those benefits if there were any. But so that's why I had to make that disconnect. And being an ambassador, it opened doors in different ways. Like, for example, if you were walking in a photo conference floor and a company sees that you're ambassador or you mentioned that you're a Sony ambassador, they'd be like, oh, you can be ambassador for our program if you want. And then I was like, whoa, what the heck? You didn't even see my work. You didn't see this. You didn't see that. But it's so weird to me because over the years, over all this time of being online for so long and being a former ambassador and Sony ambassador, whatever, what's become important to me is not just playing this game, this social media game, the influencer game, but playing it in a way that it's going to keep me sane. So I could have stayed a Sony ambassador. I could have hit up these companies and that company and been like, I'm an ambassador and throw these accolades around. And then that's when they say, yeah, for sure. But for me, it kind of sucks that they don't give you a chance to prove yourself to become an ambassador for that company unless you have that accolade already. So it's a case of like the successful people being more successful. And yet the underdogs not getting to that point because they haven't reached that first step. And because they didn't reach that first step, they don't get this, or that. And so being hyper aware of how this game has to be played, I think over the time has kind of been something that I always keep in mind of how does it affect me and how, what ways can I keep myself sane and in good health, mental health. So one thing that was needed was me being disconnected from Sony for a bit. I already, some people say I burnt my bridges at the time that it was happened, but I've already reconnected with many people from the higher ups from that company, from Sony. And it was just something I had to do. I felt that I had to do, but I'm already in good graces with them and stuff. And I'm still friends with a lot of people in part of Sony Ambassador program, and they've expressed interest, their concerns of their own at the moment. And so that's why I'm like, okay, so I guess maybe, they still need some work.
It's important to recognize that that's not the only thing as well. Like, that's not what defines success for a lot of people. Like, a lot of people out there have done really amazing work and they're like, why am I not getting this recognition from these brands ultimately? And it's like, well, why do you need that? Why, like, I think we have to dig a little bit deeper to feel like, why do we need that recognition from those brands? Because you can achieve a lot and you can still help people and you can still, produce amazing work for your clients. And even, you host workshops as well, like help people outside of those opportunities that those brands provide.
Yeah, yeah. There's so many things to just. I know it's easy for me to say, having been a former Sony ambassador, but it really is a case of like, sometimes not always what it lives up to be, in other words, or what you think it to be. And for my specific case of being a type of photographer that shoots portraits with Optimal Flash, it just was that. If I had shot landscapes, dang, all the opportunities would have been still there. And again, this is me, that frustration still kind of coming out, because so many of the collectives were landscape photographers and got promoted all the time. Because I think one person kind of explained to me, and I don't know if they're giving the benefit of the doubt to Sony, but I still don't agree with it. But they're like, with models and with clients, you have to think about like model releases and different things. And there's an extra layer of blah, 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 liability, blah, blah, blah. But I'm like, okay. And then sure, the landscape stuff, I can understand how it doesn't have that aspect, no human element to it. But also, I don't agree with your excuses. I don't agree with it. Yeah, I can get a model release and have them sign it. And then, wow, no issues now. But yeah, that's my opinion.
I think I like know personally a lot of people that have a very different style that I don't think would work commercially for those brands. And you've got to think about it from their perspective as well. Like, they don't want to sign people who are going to go against what they talk about or what they're trying to like sell as a product. So it's isn't anything on you or your work. Like, I know a lot of people that have very dark styles that just those brands aren't going to promote that. Even I think photography as a whole, like, they're not promoting a lot of photography as much these days. Like, video is priority in a lot of these brands. Like, that's the way they're going. And so they're all the new hires, all the new ambassadors are those people, even like content creators. Like, they want to seem to appeal to a broad audience. And when you get to be very specific at one thing, they don't as much care, because they're like, well, those people have already chosen their brands. That's not who we're targeting. So I don't know. And I think you have to reflect on, what do they do for you as much? Because there's so many people out there who are signed to these brands that don't do a lot and don't get any compensation in return. They just want it just for their own ego. And you think, oh, I aspire to be that way. And it's not until you get there and you hear from them that you're like, they're not having the best time either.
Yeah. It's just always good to keep that in mind, that, everything's not perfect. The people that might be with this company, maybe they're struggling as well, like in some ways. And, maybe it's good that you don't have this. Sometimes it could be like red tape, which is like this, things that prevent you from doing this. And for me being with Sony, it says in the context, you can't contract that you couldn't use other brands at all. So I couldn't even try a new Canon. When Canon came out with their first mirrorless camera, I was so interested in trying it out. Or Nikon, because this was like 2019, maybe late 2019, 20, something like that. But I was with Sony since 2017. So when those cameras came out, I wanted to try them. I really did, but I couldn't, because they said, no, you can't do that. So I was like, okay, my bad.
Yeah, I feel like I've been like that a lot as well. I'm very fortunate that I'm not a big like gear person. I don't do gear reviews. Like, I'm more about, like, I've never really talked about gear a lot. Like, I'm more about technique of like, let's learn photography and hopefully it applies across everything. But I don't do like other gear reviews. Like, I can't talk about other cameras when they're out. Like, I can only talk about my Nikon stuff, because that's who I work with. But again, I think that's one of the things you got to weigh up, is that you can't work with those brands. Does that hinder what you do and educating? Like you're saying, like, you wanted to try out other gear to help people that use that gear, and you can't necessarily do it. Like, that was something I went back and forth on for a long time. I was like, I don't really want to do like gear reviews. I don't want to talk about it anyway, so it doesn't really impact me. It's a very person by person sort of decision you've got to come to.
Yeah. When you mentioned that, I honestly super agree with that, because like I mentioned before, years ago, I was considering picking up a Sony, a Canon, and a Nikon at the time. In hindsight, I think that would have been something that I would have struggled with too much and then just return to just one camera system. And also, like you said, with you not doing like gear reviews and stuff, I don't already have that interest either. Like I really don't. Like, oh, new camera for this better screen, this I'm not that guy. So it's just, I agree with you in that aspect, because my channel is all about lighting and technique. And if I'm here like, oh, this camera is better for this reason, I'm like, that's not natural to me. It's not something I'm interested in.
And I also think that's one of the big reasons why you use flash to start with. Like you don't, like if you struggle after dark, use flash. Like that's like you don't need to always upgrade your gear to get the best stuff. Like these things work no matter what gear you're using.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
In just closing it out, I think what we've talked about there, I think there's so much for people, you know, just starting. And I love directing a lot of my advice to people that are just starting, because I feel like you said, like I didn't necessarily have those people to look up to when I was starting, or advice that was really helpful from inside the industry. Like I had other people telling me what to do, but their opinions weren't very well informed. If you had something that you could give people who are just starting, some piece of advice that you wish you had even when you were starting, I'm wondering what that would be. Even a few different things, you know, that we've sort of talked about a lot today, whether it be your style, whether it be uploading, whether it be just being out there and being yourself, whether it be working with these brands, whatever the case may be. Any advice that you would give to people just starting?
I think if they want to make content online, like for example, YouTube channel, you should always be your unique self, for one. That's just specific advice for those people. But for anybody who's kind of getting into photography or something, or I would say, or trying to develop their own style, I would say in the past, I've said, find work online and see what gravitates towards you and figure out the why. But I think to be a little bit more helpful, it would be a couple of questions. It'd be like, do you like color, or maybe a little bit desaturated or black and white? Do you like shallow depth of field or narrow depth of field? You know, figure out what you like between those two things. And then also if you like using natural light or you prefer flash, like what are those three things there kind of will very dictate how much your style would become. Oh, the last one would be also if you like, images with a wide perspective, or you want to get with a telephoto lens. And then I think then those four things would influence how you're going to, make your own style. And yeah, so YouTube, be your own self. And then those four things I mentioned for figuring out how to make your style.
And where can everyone find your work? Where's the best place to go to keep up to date with everything that you've got happening?
So I'm very fortunate that my same username for everything is the same everywhere. It's FJH Photo. It's my initials with photo. And you can find me on Instagram on that, Facebook on that, like all the websites /FJH Photo. Like you'll find me more than likely. You'll see a picture that I took like in 2013. So I'm much younger, but it's still the same me. So that's, you'll see me.
We'll make sure we leave all the links to that below this, wherever you are. If you're on YouTube or audio version only, we'll leave links. And if they want to go along to any of your up and coming workshops, I know you've got one happening in a couple of weeks, probably before this episode comes out, but I'm sure you'll have plenty more in the future. And if they're interested to learn from you, where are you in the world for everyone who is interested as well?
So I'm actually in South Texas, and I always try to specify exactly where, because a lot of times people think that could be like mid Texas, which is like, oh, so you're in Houston. I'm like, I'm horrible at geography, so I never give anybody, any flack for not knowing where, where I am in Texas. But Houston's more towards the center. I'm 4 hours south of San Antonio is where I am. So I'm like at the very bottom. So I always say basically Mexico. So that's where I am.
Complete opposite end to like where I am in the world. So hopefully if we get to cross paths one day, that would be amazing.
Yeah, for sure. That'd be awesome.
Well, thanks so much, Francisco. I really appreciate the chat, mate.
Yeah, no, I loved talking shop. So I'm glad for the opportunity to be on this podcast with you guys.
And that's the end of today's episode. If you're watching on YouTube, there'll be another episode linked up here or down below the like button. And while you're down there, why don't you leave me a comment to let me know that you are here? And I'd love to hear what you took away from this episode. If you're listening to the audio version as well on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, feel free to leave me a rating or review. It does really help to get the show out to a new audience of people just like yourself who would also be super motivated by these episodes. As we tell stories of creative people, I want to pay my respects to the first creatives of the land on which I'm recording this podcast, the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people of so-called Australia. Editing and post-production on this episode was done by Mossy Heart Media, and music by JW Payton.